Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our interview with Josh Levy. Josh is a co founder and CEO of Document Crunch, a contract intelligence platform for the construction industry. Josh, welcome to our Risk Management Show podcast today.
Boris, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. I believe that we will have a very thoughtful conversation on the topic of managing risk and contracting for the construction industry, where you are a very kind of thoughtful person to speak about. But before that, could you tell us a short story about your career path, what brought you to where you are right now, and what you guys at Document Crunch are up to these days?
Absolutely. And I just wanted to say, Boris, that as we're having this discussion, I think, my background is in construction, but I think a lot of what we're going to talk about from a risk management standpoint, having so much experience with risk management professionals, is applicable to other industries. I think about real estate, manufacturing, industrial, supply chain, so anybody who's out there in this space, I think a lot of this should resonate. But I will tell it through my lens of construction. So, the reason why Document Crunch is focused on construction is that's what I've been doing my entire career. I was a construction management major for my undergraduate degree. I ended up deciding to go to law school. I practiced exclusively as a construction attorney, representing big general contractors, developers, subcontractors, you name it. And of course, when you're in the construction legal field, you deal with a lot of insurance and risk management related issues. So I've definitely cut my teeth in that area. I transitioned about 9 years ago from private practice. I was working at the preeminent construction law firm in the United States. I transitioned into instead a single construction company. This is why I'm in Atlanta today. They brought me in-house. This is one of the largest general contractors in the United States. I think it was 15th in the rankings last year. I came into their Southeast US footprint. I ended up rising to lead that legal department. That business unit scaled from I don't know, like a little around $500 million or a little over that in revenue when I started to over $1 billion in revenue when I left. So imagine that business unit of this bigger contractor was a sizable construction organization in of itself. In addition to leading the legal department, we also had insurance compliance and insurance related matters that rolled up under me as well for that business unit. So again, I have a lot of not just big legal risk management experience, but also just day-to-day compliance and issues that arise in this space. And I ended up just becoming very overwhelmed with a few workflows when I was in-house there. I ended up hiring my old law firm, the old partner who I used to work with. In fact, I was his law clerk 15 years ago when he was a young partner. He's now the managing partner of my old firm. I ended up hiring him and my old firm to help me with some overflow, in particular related to construction contracts. I started becoming, really overwhelmed with just how much workflow we had as we were scaling. And more importantly than just the day-to-day, like, hey, putting eyes on contracts and insurance policies before we sign or whatnot. You can see I have glass doors behind me in my office here in Atlanta. Well, same thing at the construction company. While I was heads down doing all that legal work, I'd have a line of folks outside my office every day. Hard hat in one hand, piece of paper on the other hand. Hey, something happened on the job site. What do we do? Hey, this person needs to mobilize. Is their certificate of insurance right? Like all these issues that come up at the project level, these folks needed help. And I was spending, so much of my time just heads down doing this other stuff, but those folks were left out there just to fight for themselves. And I became really inspired by this idea that I thought the construction industry really needed to be better around understanding what's in their contracts and insurance policies and whatnot at the onset, but also the day-to-day compliance around those issues is super important. And at big companies and small companies, it's my fundamental thesis that those folks wearing hard hats every day, or for you other risk managers, those folks running the plants or, handling operations day to day, they're not experts in this. And they make decisions every day where compliance is necessary, and the failure to comply could create unnecessary risk or liability or profit loss. And that's really what inspired us to found Document Crunch. So our mission is to inspire everybody in the industry. And I say everybody. I don't mean just the lawyers. I don't mean just the risk managers. I mean everybody, to understand what's in their contracts, understand what's in their insurance policies, et cetera. And if we accomplish this mission, I believe our industry will become less risky. And that's really what this is about here at Document Crunch. We've had quite a bit of success, but obviously my career and my path was really focused around this problem, and that's what inspired us to do it.
Yeah, fantastic introduction. Just to the notion of risky business and construction. Just yesterday, we had a news in the Netherlands that there was a breach in construction, and yesterday was a big storm, and two guys fell down and died, unfortunately, because of winds. So it happens sometimes, and it's a risk. That's why risk management is very important in this industry.
It's terrible to hear that happen. You never want to hear that. And of course, as you know, Boris, because you've been in this field for a while. So what do we start thinking about as risk management professionals? What insurance was in place? What are the contractual risk transfers between the parties? Whose fault was it? I mean, all these things matter, and all that paperwork matters. And, you could just see, imagine the party that should be at fault didn't have the right insurance before they mobilized. Now it's going to fall to the next person, all these things really matter. And yeah, I mean, look, we never want to see bad things happen in construction, especially it sounds like the ultimate thing happened yesterday on this bridge. But the reality is that construction is risky. And therefore, managing risk is critically important to ensure good business practices.
Absolutely. So let's start with the kind of definition. So how can construction companies effectively identify and assess potential risks in a project before signing contracts?
Yeah, I mean, this is our core product that you're talking about. So, I mean, it's a super sexy area right now, AI, right? But we've been using AI for years now to quickly, instantly, essentially, identify risky issues in documents like construction contracts and insurance policies. So imagine that, you upload a contract or a document to our cloud-based software, and instantaneously it will highlight all the issues that you would have paid me a lot of money to find. We've also recently started adding some generative AI type workflows as well. So like literally we've introduced this thing that we like to call a contract genius. You can ask any question you want, and we're purpose built to answer based on the terms of that. So there's things that we automatically find, and then there's things that we enable the user to ask about. And that's like the core product itself. So, what we're hearing is that, this is greatly speeding up the ability to get through document types for professionals and risk management professionals. But maybe more importantly, this is actually enabling the non-professionals to actually start being able to make heads and tails of things that they otherwise may not have even known about. And as you know, there's so many nooks and crannies of industries where these non-professionals do need to review and make decisions. And they don't get to just call an attorney or call their risk manager 24/7. We believe with Document Crunch, we're actually now enabling them 24/7, 365 to have a contract genius in their back pocket to help them with their workflows. That is super valuable in of itself. And so that's where we started, to answer your question. Where we're ultimately going is to begin to automate certain jobs to be done for our industry where contract compliance is required. So think about the concept of giving notice the right way when an event occurs. Think about the concept of reviewing an insurance policy and making sure that the policy limits match what is in the contract. Think about the idea of, for construction, things like lien waivers, payment applications, change orders, scopes, you name it. We believe that we can not only help to just identify where the risks are and enable you to have that 365, 24/7 access to a kind of contracts genius in your back pocket. We also think we can start automating jobs to be done for our industry to ensure that mistakes are not made at the onset, in addition to education.
Yeah, it's great that you started with AI, because it's on everyone's minds these days, and specifically we hear all this semiconductors and technology companies making large inroads in the stock market, because even guys in the construction industry using AI. But can you tell me what do you see?
Yeah, let me just say this, because I think this is really important since AI is on everybody's mind. I actually did not start with AI. What I started with was the problem that our industry needed help understanding their contracts. And what I would caution everybody who's having all this AI buzz At the time, I saw that we could solve that problem using AI. If today on this podcast you told me about a better way to solve that problem, I would do that. And if tomorrow I learned about another way to solve that problem, I would do that. And so what I want to caution everybody is stop being so enamored with the technology, but find a problem. And if the technology can solve the problem, great. But I think everybody is so abuzz with this whole AI concept. Let's not forget that this should not be a gimmick. Let's hold people like me, software companies like ours, accountable to solving real problems, not just saying, oh, we use AI. And so even though AI is at the core, and it's really nice that we've been doing this for a while because now everybody's talking about it, the reality is that I tell my company every day, we're not a tech company. We're a solving construction contracts and risk company for the construction industry. That's what we are. And I don't care what the technology is. I am inspired by that mission and that problem. And we should be holding software providers accountable to telling us what problems that they're actually solving to make industries better and less risky. Sorry, I just had to get that off my chest.
Yeah, exactly.
Because everyone's saying AI, right? Everyone's saying AI right now, but like let's make sure that it's solving real problems.
Yeah, let's go deep into construction industry. So what are some common contractual pitfalls in the industry, and how contractors navigate them to minimize risk?
Yeah, it's the same as in most industries where risk managers are concerned, right? What are the insurance limits? How does the indemnity work? Are there subrogation rights? Are there limits of liability, right? What's the contractual risk transfer? These are common pitfalls in construction, which is such a dynamic industry where we just talked about stuff happens every day. Like stuff happens every day in construction, and we're called contractors for crying out loud. Who bears the responsibility for what happens is totally borne by contract. And so those same issues that impact a lot of industries, like I talked about, manufacturing, supply chain, whatnot, real estate, construction has similar contractual pitfalls. Exposure to consequential damages. And then there's a lot of other unrelated to risk management. There's a lot of other business terms that are very unique to construction too, that also are, that I wouldn't say that the risk managers care about as much, but that do impact like the business's ability to realize profit or loss when things happen that change the time or cost for performance.
Fantastic. So, but how do you see changing regulatory landscape impact risk management and contracting strategies for in your construction projects? Because I saw you are. We just spoke a little bit before our interview that you are going to Dubai, and there are different regulatory authorities. How you manage this all?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first and foremost, a pretty big realization that we have here is there's a significant international demand for what we're doing here in North America. And so, yes, I am heading to the Middle East this week because there's numerous large construction companies that are starting to desire our software. I think, Boris, candidly, this is where the rubber is going to hit the road a little bit. I mean, we're not right now operational outside of the US and Canada. But, there's like you get into Europe, for example, I'll be in Madrid this summer meeting with some European contractors. You know that there's like hidden notions of privacy and data management that don't exist in the United States right now. So I think that, there's going to be a lot of regulatory challenges that we're going to have to, navigate over time as we expand. And that only includes the jurisdictions that you're talking about. This whole AI landscape is, introducing a whole other set of potential regulatory challenges that we'll have to navigate over time. I don't know that there's any specific ones that I'm concerned about other than just understanding that they're on the horizon. But I will say, Boris, and this is, again, I'm so thankful we did this before this whole AI boom. Document Crunch recently achieved our SOC 2 Type 2 attestation, which is, for those of you who aren't tech folks, that's a pretty high level of security and data management and privacy standards, which, we have an ongoing obligation to be audited to ensure that we can meet this standard. And that ended up being a pretty prescient thing that we did, because now this is an exploding topic and going to continue, I think, to bring in more regulatory, hurdles and or a landscape that we're going to have to navigate if we want to be a best-in-class solution.
All right, fantastic. So what role does insurance play in mitigating risks for construction projects, and what types of coverage are actually essentials for contractors?
That's a great question. And so, well, I'll reduce it down to the simplest level here. So most construction companies in the United States are small companies. Okay. Imagine that we're in the city of San Francisco, and I'm a building owner of that city, or of that building in San Francisco. I own a $1 billion skyrise in San Francisco. It's done. Everybody's up going into my office every day. It's fully leased, right? I asked a small electrical contractor to come in and do some light fixture work for me. And that small electrical contractor has a $10,000 contract to do some light fixture work for me in the lobby of my building. And they miswire something. And they make $1 million a year in revenue. And they're working on my $1 billion building on a $10,000 scope of work. They miswire something and they start a fire. And the fire destroys 4 levels of my building, costing me $80 million in damage. That $10,000 contract, normal contracts say in the US, if you did that, you're responsible. Well, that contractor certainly did not price for their $10,000 contract $80 million of risk. Where does insurance come into play? How do we price that risk? And by the way, should the electrical contractor even be purchasing $80 million of risk? Or should there be a more fair balance, which says, I'm the owner, I already carry $1 billion of insurance. Maybe I could get a cheaper price for construction if I only made him carry $1 million of risk, and then I took the next $79 million of so insurance is critical for construction, because what I just described is the industry in a nutshell. You constantly have companies that are exposing large amounts of liability to themselves that their balance sheet cannot cover. Therefore, the only reasonable way that they could even perform work without going bankrupt potentially would be insurance and risk management.
Yeah, this is
the insurances you asked that are crucial for construction, off the top of my head: general commercial liability, builder's risk, professional liability, auto, workers' compensation. And I think those are the big 5, but I'm sure, you've got other coverages as well, like pollution or offsite. I mean, there's a lot of different ones, but I'd say the big 5 are the ones that I just named. And I think workers' comp may be pretty unique to the United States, I think. But again, maybe I'm showing some international ignorance right now. But those are the types that I would say are the big 5 for the construction industry.
And in what ways do project delays and disputes with subcontractors or suppliers affect risk management and contract negotiations in construction?
Well, now you're getting into other risk management products. You're talking about suretyship and bond performance and payment bonds, and you're talking about also what's becoming popular here in the U.S., sub-default insurance. And so those things come into play as well, where I would call it these business disputes that may not involve property damage or personal injury, which would be typically covered by, your GL, or design errors or omissions, which would typically be covered by professional liability. Now you're getting into like who's guaranteeing the performance under that contract. And those in our country are backstopped by those products, right? Which are not like pure insurance products, but like I'll call alternative securities for performance. And those also come into major play as well. And in fact, to your question, Boris, we actually have some major sureties and SDI carriers now using our product to help understand the contract risk that they're underwriting. Because at the end of the day, what did I say? Who bears the cost of the risk is all tied up in the contract. So if I'm guaranteeing that $10,000 contractor's performance with a payment bond, do I want to take $1 billion of risk? Is it reasonable that I'm going to issue a bond that puts $1 billion, or should I be pushing back and saying we should have a limit of liability? And before I guarantee their performance, we're going to have a limit of liability, right? And so this stuff all comes into play even on the business side as well, like you're talking about.
Right, fantastic. So what are the best practices for negotiating and drafting a contract that effectively allocate risk among the stakeholders of a project?
I think that you just actually may have said it, right? best practices are a bit subjective, but my theory as a lawyer, my theory as the CEO of Document Crunch are unchanged. I believe that risk should be allocated and managed by the person in the best position to manage that risk. So I'll just go on a limb. I'm going to talk about that $1 billion owner again. It would be, to me, economically inefficient for the owner to impose a $10,000 scope of work to carry $1 billion of insurance that the owner is going to have to pay for when the owner already has that insurance, right? It just adds double costs. And so having a proper, appropriate allocation of risk is the most important thing. But what's happening in our industry is you have informational disadvantages, and that risk is not being properly allocated due to a lack of information and transparency among disparate parties. That's what we're trying to solve for at Document Crunch. If I was working for that billion or that million or $10,000 contractor, I'd be saying, I don't have insurance to cover this risk. Do you really want me to go purchase it? Your $10,000 contract may turn into a $10 million contract. The problem is that contractor doesn't even know what I just said. Exactly. So they're taking on that risk, and now I'm going to have to go bankrupt. On the other hand, if I was representing the owner and the contractor raised that issue, I would look at the owner and say, Mr. or Mrs. Owner, they have a good point here. It's a remote chance that we're going to have a claim. We're already carrying this. Why are we doing this to ourselves? But that discussion is not taking place because people don't have the right information to even have that discussion.
All right, fantastic. So, Josh, I would like to ask you a personal point of view. What are the major misconceptions in your space that you strongly disagree with?
That AI is going to solve everything for everybody and be tantamount to a self-driving car. We like to say that we're using our product as a set of goggles to more clearly see underwater, because it's murky underwater if you don't have goggles, but you still have to swim. If you don't swim, you'll drown. You can see more clearly, but you'll drown if you don't swim. I think the misconception is that AI is just a pure automation engine. And the reality is that AI literally is reliant on human input to even exist. AI is reliant on human input. AI needs humans. It is a supplement to humans, not a replacement for humans. And that is the most common misconception. That is also why I went on my little tangent before about challenging people to not just accept that AI is awesome and it will do everything, but to actually hold us accountable to, how does this make us better? How does this de-risk us? How does this make us more efficient? How does this help supplement humans, not replace them?
Fantastic. So based on what you said, for example, if we take a life or a risk or compliance manager, if there is one thing that they should start to prioritize right now, what would it be?
I believe, and I was just in a risk management, well, risk managers use our product every day, but I was just in a broker's office yesterday who's buying a subscription to Document Crunch. Here's the deal. And I will say what I said to this broker. Your ability to be impactful in your job now exists. This technology exists to be able to give you all 24/7, 365 day a year contract genius that you can utilize to make faster decisions, to make better decisions, to give better advice, to get to the bottom of issues faster in real time. It's negligent to ignore that this exists now. And so I think for the risk management community, not everyone has to be a chief legal officer. You all know a lot of things, and we can make you even better. We can enhance your experience. And I think you can be utilizing, technology now to more quickly navigate the complex framework of things like construction contracts, insurance policies, and other commercial documents. And I think it's time that our industry takes a step forward, because if risk managers are more impactful in their ability to, render services, but also to collaborate with stakeholders, that means less risk. And what that ultimately means is more profit for everybody. That means more profit for everybody. And that is what I'm aspiring to.
Right. Fantastic, Josh. I think we made our bulk of interview already I asked all my questions, but let's summarize for someone who is listening to this interview and would like to walk away with one or two major takeaways. What would it be?
Technology is here to help you much more efficiently and effectively de-risk or understand where the risks are in complex documents, insurance policies, etc. And the second point would be AI is not going to replace all humans. AI should be used to supplement humans in solving real problems, and you should be holding software vendors like me accountable to that.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. That's actually were all my questions. Perhaps if I forgot to ask you something that you would feel very important to our audience, please go ahead.
Yeah, look, for those of you out there who are curious, we would love to hear from you. We have emerging use cases every day coming out of our shop here at Document Crunch. So please feel free to look me up, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there, Josh Levy, Document Crunch, or you can go visit our website at documentcrunch.com. All
right. Fantastic, Josh. Thank you again for this insightful interview. And I wish you a great success with your company and success with your business trip in the Middle East.
Thank you so much, Boris.